just a short presentation, because the thing I realised is we've never done health and safety in the club. And actually, thinking seriously, if something happened to a club member, although we've got insurance, if the insurer said, have your members had health and safety training, before now we couldn't say yes. But if we say yes, club members have had training, they're more likely to pay out on a claim. If every shoot, slightly more likely, if every shooter has a risk assessment form filled in, we can show that we've thought about these things beforehand. So, I've just prepared a presentation. I've tried to make it as relevant to film as I can, but there's a few general health and safety things in here. Just starting with these photographs. Of these three photographs, 2 of them actually have potential hazards in them. Can you spot which one?
There's a lot of them in the road.
Yes. Yeah. There's the person, they're filming in the road. This guy here, he is looking behind him, but if he steps back, and this is something that I've thought before, if you're so busy filming and all the crew is leaning in and somebody steps backwards into a road, there could be traffic. And in this case, there is a bicycle coming up, and I know it doesn't sound like a big hazard, but someone could be hit. So it's being aware of potential hazards. Now this one.
Why aren't they wearing high-vis jackets?
That's another thing.
I mean, they are in the middle one.
Yeah, the middle one is the best.
Provided by the southern water.
Yes. And hard hats.
Yeah.
Obviously they're in some sort of water treatment area. And he's probably carrying a risk assessment form, because that one came off the health and safety website.
Yeah. But
the others were just when I googled film and just got some pictures of crew. Anyone have the idea of this one?
where are they?
They're in California.
Yeah, but specific, I think. Is it a car park or?
No idea.
It's a garden, is it?
I don't know, but it's outside. But it
There's
is.
some fire extinguishers in the background. Or...
That is true. They are prepared because they've got fire extinguishers with them. They've got a cone of some kind here.
Yes.
So it's just thinking of all the things that might come up on a shoot, thinking ahead of time, and even silly things like it's sunny. It might be raining when you set out, but sunny later in the day. So are you prepared for that becoming a hazard? And obviously lots of water if it's hot. So these are just some things to consider. Now, the Health and Safety Law, including the Health and Safety at Work Act, 1974, that's the act that we've got to follow, film. You need to do hazard recognition and identifying of all risks from the script. So the director and producer should sit down before the shoot, look through the script and think of every potential possible little thing. Even how silly it sounds, it could still end up being a risk. The management of health and safety, it needs to be managed during the shoot. So what you should ideally do is nominate somebody in charge of health and safety, who's there on that day. Probably best not to be the cameraman or someone who's really busy, but someone who has a role but then maybe steps back, who could be aware of hazards and is prepared to go up to the director or producer and say, really, this is getting a bit dark now. We do a lot of lifting, of really heavy boxes, cases, and it's one of those things that you just don't think, oh, I'll just lug this over and push this over here. It sounds daft to watch a video on just how to lift one tiny small box. If you're not careful, you could injure yourself, and then you're stuck with your main job. So it's just to be aware of even daft things like lifting something up is a safety hazard, and we should all be careful. And also, never be scared to say, I can't manage that on my own. Right. Big question here is, who is responsible? So I looked up on the Health and Safety Executive website, and it says in the section under filmmaking, the producer of the film is responsible. And you should ensure as far as reasonably practicable, and that's a good cop-out phrase. You say, well, it just wasn't practical to do it, but you are responsible. That the persons working with and for them are not exposed to risks to their own health and their safety. So, if you are a producer of your film, then it comes back on you if you haven't taken certain precautions. So you should really have the designated first aider on your shoot. So you ask people, say, well, who's got, at least some experience, and then you say, right, if there's something going wrong, we turn to you to help. And you know who the designated person is. And some genres pose more risk than others. For example, horror and action films, or scenes involving animals. And I have this terrible image in my head of someone, attacked by a lion. The production team should discuss safety issues before filming. So you should always, just before you start, the crew turn up at the beginning of the day, have a little chat. So today we're filming here, there's that potential hazard, we are near the road, please be aware of it. You cover your back as director or producer if you've done that, if you've spoken to your crew, and then you say, well, I've told you now. Risk assessment forms. Now, on the website, and there's another link to the website there, they provide a risk assessment form. We're going to look at that in a minute. When you're considering risk assessment, you work closely with the director using the script, and you consider the likely hazards, look at each page in detail, who could be harmed, so it's your actors, your crew, anyone who's around at the time could be harmed. Property that could be damaged is also a consideration. Right. The other thing is any controls that are already in place. Now, I do things with my students, and we are in the college environment, which has health and safety policy, and it has its own first aiders, and it has its like fire safety here, we've got a fire extinguisher. There are signs and plans, and all these things are already in place in the building. So quite often on my risk assessments, I just put see risk assessment for the venue. When we filmed at the Lensbury Club, and we were all there during the shoot that weekend, they had asked me about risk assessment and then not referred back, and so I referred to them. I knew that they had first aiders on site, they told me who they were, and we had it written down somewhere just in case. We knew their procedures, and they said, well, I want you to, and I had to use their procedures for the fire drill and give out an announcement at the beginning of the function. What you need to do is fill in the risk assessment once you've thought of it, and for each likely hazard, you bear in mind the controls already in place, then you record the risk assessment, and there is a table. I'm not sure if the table is on the slide, or the table is on the other document. And then further actions to be considered will be determined by the level of risk. You have to look at the level of risk. This is like some examples. Hot sand underfoot on a beach, filming on a beach. This came ready filled in as an example for one for the film crew. Behaviour of a dog on a film set. Burns from a campfire. Property that could be damaged. And risk controls already in place. So the one for the dog is the dog will be on a leash and supervised at all times, and will not be left unattended. So if you had an animal or something, you have to designate someone who is sitting, and that person might get really bored all day, but that is their job. They can't be someone who's doing another job and you just say, oh, please take care of the dog in between. It has to be a designated person. The campfire, all actors and crew to sit at least 2 metres from the fire, fire to be set at least 20 metres from any property, fire extinguishers with trained operators on the set. And then the next column along is when you say it's high, moderate or low risk. When they're not involved in the shoot, actors and crew have shaded area away from the sand. You've thought of what you're going to do between things. You just look at what is your hazard. Now, if it's rare, then it's sort of low risk, and then you could go up to extreme, almost certainly going to happen. Yeah, and it's moderate, or then it's a major and extreme risks. So yeah, almost certainly likely to happen on any shoot is picking up heavy things. So there's some things that always happen on a shoot, some things that are very unlikely or very rare. Okay. Other careful considerations to the availability of information. Is there mobile phone reception in the area? How will you keep to date with changes in the weather? Tidal waters. If you are on the beach or somewhere, you don't want to get trapped if the sea's coming in. And how easy is it for members of emergency services to reach you if you go filming somewhere that's inaccessible? Alright, and this is an actual form, and this is a blank one. So we could put a blank version up, and then people for their shoots in the future from the website could download it to fill in. Phone numbers, details, you've got them with you. You've written them down and you've got these numbers with you. Knowing where the local chemist is, in case you need to go and buy a paracetamol, but I always have some with me. When the risk assessment is completed, be sure that everyone knows about it and take it with you. So you tell all your crew you've done the risk assessment. Brief the crew before shooting begins, any potential risk that day. Ask them to provide you with information if they have underlying medical conditions. Now this is the interesting thing. It's no good asking somebody who's got an already existing back condition, please go and lift that heavy thing over there. But they also have to have told you that they've got a back problem. Nominate a member of crew to be aware of the risks throughout the day, especially if the conditions change. And it's very easy for us all to be on a shoot and go, oh, it doesn't work in that direction. Look, it's great, we'll pick up our feet and we'll go over there. And somebody might be in a different place with different risks. Take a list of contact names, emergency numbers with you on the location. Take a medical kit, plasters, bandages, sun cream, paracetamol, water, you know, all the things you might need. Take high-vis jackets, and we've got some for the club, haven't we? Plenty of gaffer tape for training wires and reduce trip hazards, and use it. I am as bad as everyone else, you know, my students are going, pull that extension lead over there, and move it, and move that over there. And then one of the students pulls over it. Put equipment boxes out of the way. Again, it's an easy thing to be in a hurry, get all the equipment out and leave things where people could trip over them. Provide gloves for hot lights and instruct no one to touch them other than the lighting technician. And never forget, you're legally responsible. So it's all of the club members, we're all responsible for each other, we're all responsible for ourselves. And be prepared, you know, I'm told I'm a pessimist, but actually if you think of everything that could possibly go wrong, then nothing will go wrong. It's on the day you don't think of it that something does go wrong. And that's it. Thank you.
Final point, Jacky, is that the bottom line here, never forget that you're legally responsible. That applies even if you are the inter party. It could be that your producer and everyone around you has got all the reasonable things in place. They put you on a training course. If you have an accident and it's been proved, or can be proved by a health and safety authority that you were negligent in lack of observation or whatever, you could be prosecuted, even though you've lost an arm.
But as a club, at least we can think of these things and try and be aware of them.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.